Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the brand new mono-blue Puzzle Masters Planeswalker, Teferi Chronoclast. So, let's get into it. Teferi is a brand new Teferi, or a brand new mono-blue Planeswalker, that has been introduced to Puzzle Quest. Teferi Chronoclast is the Puzzle Masters version of Teferi, and brings to the table some brand new abilities. Now, to get this kick started, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Octagon Studios for sending me this Planeswalker so I could go ahead and make this review for you guys. Now, Teferi Chronoclast. Teferi at level 60 is going to have 92 health. Teferi has one of our brilliant new passives called Denial, which is going to make it so that when your opponent casts a card, if that card is blue, you gain 2 mana. Otherwise, you're going to deny a gem. Now, Deny is a new mechanic that was introduced with this blue Puzzle Masters that says when you create a denial gem, your opponent gets denied. It's going to be like a little symbol that appears next to your opponent's Planeswalker. When a denial gem is matched, if a denied player matched it, restrain that player. Otherwise, create a time bubble token. Denial gems count as improved gems. So let's break this down a little bit so it becomes a little bit simpler and easier to understand, right? So when you create a denial gem, right, when you deny, it's going to immediately turn a blue gem on the battlefield into an improved gem. So the blue gem is going to take a slightly different look. It's going to change its appearance to become a slightly different looking blue gem. Then when you've done that, right, if there's no blue gems on the battlefield that can turn into one of these deny gems, then it will actually convert gems to make deny gems, right? So if you deny 1 and there are no available blue gems on the battlefield, it will convert 1 to blue. If you deny 4 and there are no available blue gems on the battlefield, it'll create 4, right? So it's just going to make sure that there are enough gems for you to be able to deny and that all of them are going to be blue. Then if, let's say you're playing with Teferi, and you are making the denial gems, and your opponent matches those denial gems, then what will happen is your opponent becomes, they're going to be denied, and then they are going to be restrained. What restrain is going to do is it's going to lower all of their non-blue mana bonuses by 1. It cannot lower them to less than 0, though. So you'll find that you'll be able to get your opponent to have 0 or negative, if that's their base modifier, for all of their mana bonuses except for blue. Now, if you make one of those matches on one of those improved gems, then you are going to create a time bubble token. That time bubble token is going to be a 1 shield support. It can go on any color, so it's not actually going to be restricted to just blue gems. And it reads that if you match this support, basically if you destroy it during your turn, then it will get destroyed and it will drain 3 mana from your opponent. If your opponent matches or destroys the gem on their turn and they have a card with mana in their hand, then they immediately discard that card. So they lose that card that had mana. If you haven't been following the developers' updates about things that they're trying to implement in the game, they've been searching for a way to try and implement counterspells into Magic Puzzle Quest, and this is their attempt to try and get counterspells into Puzzle Quest. I had a few matches that really did feel like I was playing a pseudo version of paper mono blue control with an insane amount of counterspells. The amount of power that you're going to be able to get from these deny gems in countering your opponent's abilities is insane. Furthermore, you're also going to find that by lowering your opponent's mana bonuses through the restrain effect from the deny gems, that you're going to be able to also really put your opponent behind. They're going to have a really hard time catching up if you get ahead, because all their mana bonuses are going to be lowered. If they are gaining mana, it's going to take them longer to fill up the mana of the cards in their hand. And then if they wind up matching one of the gems that has a time bubble on it, they're going to lose their cards. Now, You're going to see some images on the screen as we go to sort of back up some of the things that I'm saying. But when you create time bubble gems, you can see all of them on the battlefield. However, when your opponent plays time bubble gems, you actually just see the whole gem layout become sort of shrouded in shadow in a way, right? Like this sort of like off-color shadow. And so you actually cannot see your opponent's time bubble gems. However, you can see the improved deny gems. So one way that you can try and get around the deny gems is by matching them yourself so that your opponent is unable to match them and turn them into the time bubble gems. That said, if you are taking the time to match those gems so your opponent doesn't get the time bubble gems, then you're going to be temporarily lowering your own mana bonus. So these deny gems are by far the strongest of the improved gems that we have seen. When we wind up seeing seed gems, you'll see that you'll be able to try and compare and see if those are really going to match up to deny gems. I've actually had a chance to play with seed gems, and they do. They're pretty crazy. But that is not the subject of this video. So Teferi Chronoclast has 3 abilities apart from his passive. The first one is Nope. The second one is anti-clockwise, and the third one is back to turn 0. That first ability, Nope, is going to deny 4 gems and then increase the cost of all cards in your opponent's hand by 2. This ability is absolutely busted. If you just spam this first ability, you're able to exact a form of control on the board and your opponent that is almost second to none. I mean, like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria's third ability is able to give you quite an exceptional amount of control, and Bolas the Ravager's flipped third ability, in disabling your opponent from drawing cards, is able to give some pretty ridiculous control. But this first ability, Nope, is going to give you a level of control unlike anything from any other Planeswalker from a first ability, in something that you can just spam out. These improved blue gems are absolutely nutty. The second ability, anti-clockwise, is going to create an anti-clockwise token. That token is a blue support emblem with 3 shields and has, when your opponent makes a non-blue match by swap, Restrain. So remember, Restrain is going to make it so that all of their non-blue mana bonuses are going to be reduced by 1. So when your opponent makes their swap, if their swap is not blue, then they're going to have -1 to all of their non-blue mana bonuses, which is, once again, fairly prohibitive. Then you're going to convert 7 gems to blue. Then you're going to gain X mana, where X is the number of blue gems. The second ability, anti-clockwise, even if it didn't create the anti-clockwise token, is one of the best mana gaining abilities in the game. Like, it's better than Nissa Worldwaker's first ability, as an example. I'd put it on par with, if not even better than, Koth's first ability. Granted, this costs 12 loyalty, as opposed to Worldwaker's, I want to say, 9, and Koth's 6. However, to have this on a blue Planeswalker is just completely nutty. There are so many cards that are just complete power cards in Standard right now. Things like Tiamat, which is going to get you a bunch of dragons in hand, or the Prismatic Bridge, and you're going to ultimately be able to get those cards out, or the subsequent cards that they're going to help provide for you, just by using this ability. And then also by it converting gems is going to give you more loyalty, so it's going to make it so that you can just sort of keep using those abilities over and over and over again. So both Nope and anti-clockwise are both top tier abilities, some of the best abilities in the game. The third ability, back to turn 0, is going to cost you 19 loyalty and is going to make it so that each player discards all cards with mana that can be discarded from their hand. Then you're going to draw X cards, you're going to deny X gems, and you're going to restrain X times. So each card in your hand gains X mana. X is going to be the total number of cards discarded this way. So let's say that hypothetically you have a full hand of 6 cards, your opponent has a full hand of 6 cards, then you're both going to, and they have mana, then you're both going to discard your hands. You're going to draw 6 cards because that's the cap. You're going to deny 12 gems. You're going to restrain, so reduce your opponent's non-blue mana bonuses by 12. And then each card in your hand is going to gain 12 mana because that would be the number of cards discarded that way. This ability is actually quite a good ability, and you would think that maybe it wouldn't be because it's going to force you to discard cards that have mana. But if your opponent has cards with mana, or if they're like holding on to removal or something, you can just get rid of it, which is really sweet. Furthermore, this ability is going to come in really clutch in an event like, say, a Timeless Voyage, because when there's that big boom turn and everyone gets full mana to all the cards in their hand, there are now so many cards in blue that give you extra swaps that you'll be able to just give yourself a free extra swap, play the cards that have mana in your hand, and then on your extra swap turn, you then use back to turn 0 and get rid of all the cards in your opponent's hand, which is absolutely ridiculous. I apologize, there's going to be a little bit more noise in this one than usual. We have some house guests right now, more babies, and so my own kids are just extra rambunctious, but such is the way of children. Anywho, all 3 of Teferi Chronoclast's abilities are absolutely exceptional abilities. Nope. And anti-clockwise especially, absolutely make this Planeswalker. Now, as for some cards to try and build around it, and then the decks that I'm going to be running in this particular video. The first deck that I'm going to be running is going to be taking advantage of some of the new Puzzle Masters cards. And basically, I wanted to try and recreate the feel of playing a paper counterspell deck while also avoiding the use of any mythics or masterpieces. So I wound up building around the strongest creatures that I felt like I could and tried to get a little bit of extra control in the deck as well. So I ran Dragon Turtle because it's an excellent form of lockdown and defense for your Planeswalker by having both Vigilance and disabling the opponent's first creature on the battlefield. I ran the Temporal Adept, which is going to pair very well with the Deny Gems that you're going to be making with Teferi, because the Time Bubble supports are indeed supports. So when those get destroyed, you're also going to be bouncing your opponent's creatures. Then I also, for my final creature, wound up deciding to run Torrent Sculptor. So this is one of the strongest blue rares in the game, just for sheer power. As it has when it enters the battlefield, you pick one of the first 3 spells from your graveyard, exile it, and give this thing a permanent power toughness boost equal to the mana cost of that card. So if you've got cards in, like in this deck with Galvanic Iteration or Echoing Equation that cost 15 mana, then Torrent Sculptor is going to be 16 mana for a 17/17. At the very worst, we're going to be getting rid of a Solendi Vision, which is going to add 8/8, and it's 16 mana for a 10/10 with Ward, which is still pretty solid. Then we have, as I mentioned, Galvanic Iteration and Echoing Equation. The Echoing Equation is just going to reinforce our creatures, and the Galvanic Iteration is going to ideally enable us to get more spells. The new cards that are sort of like counterspells are Teferi's Response and Counterlash. So Counterlash is going to make your opponent discard the first card with mana from their hand, and then potentially give you mana. And Teferi's Response is going to drain mana from your opponent's hand, and then make your opponent discard the first card without mana in their hand. Then it's also going to deny 3 gems. So the idea is that between Teferi's Response, Counterlash, and Teferi Chronoclast's first ability, we'll be able to get rid of all of the cards that our opponent are trying to be charging up with mana. Now, this is definitely by no means the best deck that you can run with Teferi Chronoclast. It was just what I wound up scraping together in an attempt to try and feel what it's like to play a counter deck in paper, but in Puzzle Quest. Now, this deck is going to be trying to take advantage of Teferi's first ability. Nope. Trying to get as many Deny Gems on the battlefield as possible, and generally not using the other abilities unless I particularly need mana. The second deck that I'm going to be running is more of just an absolutely ridiculous deck based on Tiamat and the Dragon. So Tiamat is just going to fetch us more dragons and give them mana. The Dragon is going to be feeding our dragons mana and making it so that we draw extra cards and give them mana. And Dragon Turtle, just like in the other deck, is going to serve as a defensive creature. I've got the Prismatic Bridge here just to fetch more dragons, because more dragons is a good thing. You'll see that there are some parallels in the deck in me running both Magosi, the Water Veil, and Solendi Vision. This is just so that I get extra gem conversion, in addition to Seagate Restoration, which is also going to be giving us extra gem conversion through the Seagate Reborn token. And then finally, I'm just giving myself a little bit of bonus control with stuff like Fading Hope and Teferi Hero of Dominaria, which is also going to serve as a tempo maker by drawing me more cards. And then finally, Paradox Haze, which is just absolutely disgusting, as it's going to be giving us extra swaps, it's going to be denying our opponent's gems, and it's going to be drawing us bonus cards. So this deck kind of raffle stomps our opponents, And the idea here is just to try and spam your second ability to just get as much mana as possible, to get as many dragons as possible, as quickly as possible, so that you kill your opponent before they can really do anything. So you're going to get to see Teferi in two forms, one as a control deck and one as an aggro deck. The last thing that I wanted to showcase here were just some cards that struck me as being really cool with Teferi before we get into the gameplay. So if we just go to cards that Teferi can use, if you take a look at drain mana, because Teferi is going to be draining an awful lot of mana from your opponents. The first of the cards that is really nice is Jadzi, Oracle of Arcavius. So this one has, if not invoked, when an effect you control drains mana from your opponent's hand, gain 7 mana. And so with the way that deny gems work, with the time bubble effect, that time bubble effect is going to be making a support that when you match it is going to drain 3 mana from your opponent's hand. So you're just going to get actually quite a lot of mana drain that's happening rather consistently with Teferi. And so if you're using Jadzi in a deck with Teferi, then you're going to be able to get just absolutely ridiculous amounts of mana once you're able to get Jadzi on the battlefield. Furthermore, because Jadzi has Ward 8, it's fairly difficult to get rid of this thing. So it's going to just sort of stay on the battlefield and be sort of a consistent pest. Another thing along the same lines is Lol Mage Mentor, because this one has an ability that makes it so that when effect you control drains mana from your opponent's hand, you create Merfolk tokens. And then when a Merfolk creature you control attacks, you drain even more mana from your opponent's hand. And then that's just going to keep making more Merfolk. So if you want, you can run a deck that actually runs the Lol Mage Mentor and Jadzi together, as those are going to be able to do some pretty ridiculous things. If we restrict ourselves to just standard, and we avoid the idea of Legacy, because I actually don't really play Legacy, although I do have a fairly complete collection. Hullbreaker Horror is an amazing card to throw in this deck. Teferi needs a little bit more removal than just his abilities are going to provide for you. So having something like Hullbreaker Horror or the Teferi Vanguard are really going to elevate this Planeswalker from great to one of the best, because they're going to enable you to get a little bit more control than you would otherwise be able to get with blue, given that blue has fairly limited options to removal. Blue's removal, for that matter, and this is the other thing that you're going to want to be factoring into your deck, are going to be bounce effects, or return something to your opponent's hand. And so for this, you can go with an Origins card like Displacement Wave that's going to bounce the whole board of creatures, which is definitely going to be very useful, as it's going to serve as a pseudo world wipe. You could run Harbinger of the Tides, if, once again, from Origins. This is going to serve as just additional control and is a phenomenal card to run with Teferi. Teferi's first ability, Nope, is going to make it so that cards in your opponent's hand are going to cost more mana. And so between the Harbinger of Tides bouncing something and making it cost 6 more, and then Nope, and then all the other mana drain that you're going to be able to have going on from Deny Gems, this is going to give you quite a lot of control with the deck, which is going to feel really good. It's just generally going to provide you with a lot of control, which you probably want to be running if you're running the deck. And then the last one, although I'm running it, is Fading Hope, just because it's a 4 mana creature bounce card. Hopefully we see some cards that are going to be able to bounce without that if your opponent has 5 or less cards in hand. That's been a major limiter in blue being a good color in Puzzle Quest of late. But nonetheless, even with that, those are cards that are going to be able to make up for Teferi's deficiencies, which is basically just removing things from the battlefield. So let's go ahead and check out the gameplay. So this first match here is kind of just a perfect example of Teferi gone right, and how this can really feel like a mono blue deck from paper. So you'll see that I'm up against Tibalt, and so as I'm in Platinum, and this is Platinum Training Grounds, my first thought was, oh great, I'm up against a Tainted Adversary Tibalt deck. This is going to be rough. And so my goal here, given that I feel like I'm probably up against a Tainted Adversary Tibalt deck, is to try and lock Tibalt down as quickly as possible. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've already got a Counterlash in my hand. I'm going to take an Echoing Equation here, just because I felt like that would enable me to try and kill my opponent a little bit more quickly, because killing my opponent is definitely going to be really important here. And you'll see that I have 2 Counterlashes and a Teferi's Response in my starting hand right here. I mean, it's not my starting hand, but like my early game hand. So I'm going to go ahead and use my first ability. You'll see that all of Tibalt's cards are now going to cost 2 more mana. you'll see that I am now going to get time bubbles, and you're also going to see these gems right here. These are the improved blue gems, right? These single shield supports here are the time bubbles. So I now have some time bubbles in order to be able to potentially get rid of cards from Tybalt's hand. And then in addition to those time bubbles, I'm also going to be able to be getting rid of them with the counter lashes. So there's going to be counter lash number 2. So I've effectively now countered 2 cards from Tybalt. You'll see that Tybalt has both of these little yellow icons right here now. And so the first of those is going to be showing that Tybalt's mana bonuses are lowered. And the second one is going to be showing that Tybalt will be the target of all of our lowering effects. So we're going to go ahead and effectively counter the third of Tybalt's cards in a row right there. And not only are we countering the third of Tybalt's cards right there, but our Dragon Turtle is going to be locking Tybalt down as well. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to counter lash here. I'm going to create even more of those time bubble tokens. I'm going to be countering the 4th straight card right there with the counter lash. Tybalt is going to get himself a pretty good match there, which is honestly just fine. I've got a Torrent Sculptor, which is good because that's going to be one of my win conditions. I've got my first ability again, so I'm able to use Nope, which is going to let me deny even more gems. I'm able to counter, what is that, the 5th straight card right there, by just getting rid of it right there. And then fortunately for me on the bottom left, I have 3 time bubbles that I'm going to be able to get up here. So I play the Torrent Sculptor. I'm going to get rid of a counter lash to give it +12/+12, which is giving me a 14/14. Which is definitely going to be really good. And then I have a lot of options available to me here, but ultimately what I want to do is I want to try and keep as many of my time bubbles on the field as possible. So Tybalt's going to go ahead, use his first ability. You'll see that Tybalt's mana bonuses are lowering as a result of matching my gems. I get some gem conversion from the Selendi Vision, and on top of that, I now am able to use my first ability yet again. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. You'll see that some gems converted there in the middle. That's because there weren't enough blue gems to be able to take on the deny gems. And so that will happen when there aren't enough gems on the battlefield. And you'll see that that just gave me a whole bunch of mana. So I now am going to play yet another blue converter. And I have a whole bunch of time bubble gems on the board. So you'll see that Tybalt gets that big match, which is going to give him some mana, but it really makes no difference because I've used my first ability so many times that the cards in his hand are just too expensive for him to be able to play. So I'm going to go ahead and once again use my first ability so that I'm able to get even more of these gems and increase the cost of my opponent's cards by even more because, you know, I'm obnoxious that way, and that's okay. And so here what I was thinking was if I got the Galvanic spell off, then I'd be able to get multiple echoing equations. And so I wanted to be able to just sort of swing for the win like that. Now here you'll see that Tybalt gets the extra swap, and nothing could have been worse for Tybalt because Tybalt destroys a time bubble, which cascades and destroys another time bubble, which gets rid of 2 cards from Tybalt's hand. So we just effectively countered now a 3rd card that turn. So we kind of just countered 8 cards. We've countered 8 out of 10 cards that Tybalt would have played. Tybalt charged up mana and wasn't able to play 8 of the 10 cards possible. And on top of that, because we've frozen his first card, we've almost completely locked Tybalt down and out of this game. So I'm going to be able to play Echoing Equation here if I want. I'm going to go ahead and do that on my Dragon Turtle, which is going to make it so that I can kill Tybalt in 2 turns. You'll see that I've given myself an extra swap, which is absolutely perfect. I'm going to use my first ability again to get even more of these time bubbles. And if I take the red match on the bottom, as I do, it's going to destroy one of my supports, enabling me to use my Temporal Adept to bounce the first of my opponent's creatures, and now the second of my opponent's creatures. And so now, not only have I countered 8 of the 10 spells that Tybalt has played, but I've also been able to now bounce the only 2 that he has effectively played, which really felt a heck of a lot to me like mono blue control from Paper Magic. This is going to be the end of Tybalt. There's nothing that Tybalt's going to be able to do to stop this, and Tybalt has been completely locked down by the combination of Teferi's first and that new sort of counterspell mechanic. So let's go ahead and move on to the second game. For the second match, I wanted to go ahead and showcase a game where I'm focusing on the second ability instead of the first, and I'm using some more overpowered cards. So this is going to be my dragon-based deck using Teferi Chronoclast. You'll see that I'm actually going to go ahead and disable the Celindy Vision in my hand because I want to get as much gem conversion going as I can. The gem conversion is ultimately what's going to get me more loyalty and enable me to play more dragons. And you'll see that in my first two draws, I've got 2 T-Mats in my hand. So this is going really, really well for me. I just need to get a little bit of conversion down. I'm going to go ahead and take a Fading Hope just in case Nico plays some kind of nasty creature. I very much don't want him to do that. And then I get even luckier in that my gem conversion winds up getting me enough to play my T-Mat. So here I've got a fantastic blue match. It's going to get me blue over here into loyalty as these 2 drop down. So I'm definitely going to want to go ahead and do that. And I get super lucky by getting a 5 match. So T-Mat comes down. You'll see that I'm at my second ability, which is even luckier. I'm going to move my Dragon Turtle and my Dragon up. I'm going to use my second ability now, which you see converts gems and then gives me mana, which is going to enable me to play my second T-Mat here on this turn. And then by playing my Magosi first and then my Dragon Turtle second, it's going to confirm that T-Mat in my hand is going to be able to fetch me both dragons. So I get my Dragon Turtle down, I get my Dragon down, I get a T-Mat down, and you'll see that I'm already at my second ability again. And even though there aren't that many blue gems here on the battlefield, as I draw a third T-Mat, this is definitely going to be enough to get rid of my opponent. So I'm going to use my second ability yet again. It fully charges pretty much my whole hand. I make a slight mistake. I should have moved the Dragon Turtle up 1 that is in the second position because it has T-Mat's buff. So it would have given me extra Dragon Turtle reinforcements from the second Dragon Turtle, but whatever. Here I was fishing for a 5 match, but it's entirely unnecessary. So I get the Dragon Turtles down. They're going to start reinforcing like crazy. I get more Dragons down. They're going to be reinforcing like crazy. I get another T-Mat down. And that's all she wrote. This game is very over. And Teferi was able to aggro like mad, get down all the dragons, and kill Nico in no time flat. In conclusion, Teferi Chronoclast may have come into the game a little bit too hot. The first ability, the Deny Gems, the second ability for the ramp, the passive ability to get even more Deny Gems, the Puzzle Master set that gives us even more Deny Gems, it just might be a little bit too good. Teferi Chronoclast is amazing. There is no doubt that this is an S-tier Planeswalker. It is very probably an S+ tier Planeswalker. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think it is. It's absolutely insane. I would definitely suggest that you pick this Planeswalker up. Now, if you aren't a person who spends money, the $30 ticket price is pretty expensive. It does, fortunately, come with 2 of these blue Puzzle Masters packs. I'm going to be going over these separately. There are some excellent cards in it. Paradox Haze is pretty crazy. The Mock Sapphire is, of course, really good. And Time Walk is also pretty crazy as well. So just all of those extra swaps are really good. There's some really good Origins cards that are in here as well. Things like Harbinger of Tides, Days Undoing. Those are both cards that are pretty much staples in Standard pretty much always because they're from Origins and they're perma Standard. So I feel like at the very least, if you do wind up buying Teferi for money, you're going to get a pretty solid value out of it because you're going to be getting access to an absolutely cracked Planeswalker with an insane new ability. If you've gone up against Teferi Chronoclast in the training grounds, then you definitely know what I'm talking about. This thing is just entirely insane in terms of power. So we've now gotten back-to-back crazy good Planeswalkers. I would say that Ajani from the Puzzle Master set is an S+ tier Planeswalker. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that Teferi Chronoclast is an S+ tier Planeswalker. And the upcoming Planeswalker from Puzzle Masters, whenever she comes out, Nissa, is looking pretty great as well. So definitely try and save up some of your mana crystals, your gold gems, to pick up Teferi Chronoclast if you're a free-to-play player. This is a Planeswalker that you absolutely want in your collection. Like, absolutely. You can play this by spamming the first ability. You can play this by spamming the second ability. The mana gains for this thing are absolutely exceptional. Really, the only drawback to Teferi Chronoclast is his starting health total, which is I think 93, 92, 93. It's pretty bad, but you get around that by having absolutely exceptional control and mana gains. So yeah, that's really all there is to it. Get this Planeswalker. You're going to want it. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one.